myself. My name is Cheyenne Legrand. I'm from the Big Stone Nation. I am an artist and curator. For my practice, I work in performance, video, sound, installation, and fashion. I'm a core member for Ducharme, so we're part of the collective here. And I'm grateful to be here with you all. I'll have Erin introduce herself next.
Hi, I said I was Erin Sutherland. I am of Haitian descent, and I'm from northern Alberta in Grand Prairie. And I'm a core member of What 61. I'm also a curator, an independent curator outside of What 61, and I work at the University of Calgary.
And so we're so thankful and lucky to have Karen and Justin with us today, and I'll have you both introduce yourself and tell everyone about your practice.
Hi, that's it. I'm Cardinal McCartney. Can you guys hear me okay? Should I talk about it good? I'll be right back. Thank you. I go by he, him, or they, them. I was born in Minnesota, which is so-called Fort McMurray. My family's from Port Chippewa. We're Athabasca, Dene First Nation, people of the Willow, Nancy, and I XU family lands there. I was raised in foster care since 9 months, in and out. I live in so-called Calgary right now. I'm two-spirit, transgender, lesbian, butch, trans-mask, or whatever that kind of colonial standard best fits me. It's not really in my hands, I feel. And I'm a multidisciplinary artist in my own practice. There's a video, performance, starting a new painting series. And my practice really focuses around my family, growing up in being apprehended, growing up in foster care, and really living as who I was, especially up north. It's a really different kind of environment. And I moved to Oakensis, so-called Calgary, 2013. And right now I'm the co-artistic director with Dr. Hanu at Star Gallery, which is a not-for-profit restaurant center in downtown Oakensis. And I think that's it.
Hi, my name is Justin. Introducing myself. Sorry, I've been everywhere in the last week, so I'm like a little exhausted. But I was born and raised in the Métis community of St. Ambrose, Manitoba. I lived there until I was 17. When I moved to Vancouver to study film. So my primary practice, I identify as a multidisciplinary artist, but my primary practice is filmmaking, narrative filmmaking. I'm also a screenwriter, and I have done film curation in the past. And I also grew up dancing, jigging and square dancing and shit, so I could bust a jig if you wanted to.
Oh my god, please.
Should have just said anything.
Yeah. You need that.
But I currently live in Vancouver, which is where a majority of my film work takes place. I'm also a poet, and I have a lived experience as a full-service sex worker. So a lot of the work that I make, especially in narrative film, is done to try and humanize the experience, specifically of Indigenous sex workers, and sex workers in general, actually, because I think that they've been taken advantage of a lot by cinema. And my experiences growing up seeing that on screen was quite different than my lived experience. So a lot of my work kind of revolves around sex and family and trying to, I guess, show these things in a different light that feels more human and more grounded in reality, at least for my lived experience that I had. And yeah, sorry.
No, thank you. I'm gonna
gonna at some point get you to you offer it, and I'm gonna take it.
Come to find me at a bar later.
Yeah, I think to start, it'd be nice to hear a little bit about your works, the process of creating it. Anything you want to share about start with that.
Okay. This work behind us is called Now You Know I'm a Crier. So in 2016, the wildfire for Newbury was really heavily impacted everything. And I didn't go home since the start of my, I guess you could call it transition, medical wise. So I left in 2013. The fire happened in 2016, and just seeing the devastation of the fire was really nothing I've ever seen before. And I feel like the Indigenous community where I'm from was heavily impacted. We were the last to evacuate, least taken care of, just everything you would expect in so-called Canada. And since it's such an oil town, it's very heavily the man camps, and I think the ratio is assigned 13 to 20 males, dudes, one assigned people. It's very, it's definitely a dude town. So that's kind of the environment I grew up in. So it was really impactful going with my partner Tony, who filmed the entire piece behind me. She's also an artist as well, and also queer. So it was really important taking her home with me and showing her the landscape and just showing her what how it felt to grow up there, especially in white family foster care environment in and out of homes. So being around all of the destruction and I guess devastation, I think it really came down to I just needed to take a moment. We were filming for hours and we were just both really tired. It was around March 27th, and it was one of the last few months before the winter finally ended. It's kind of in Edmonton, it's just so cold, and the river was finally breaking up. So it was really nice. This was shot on the Horse River. There's 3 main rivers. This was the Horse. This is where all the bush parties used to happen. It was really good. All the pallet fires. And that's where all the really cool kids used to go on with a couple. Only a couple in our school. And so it was really nice taking Tony there. It just you can really know winter is finally ending. When the river starts to break up, you hear the sounds and the pops and the bubbles and the cracks. So it really came from trust and vulnerability and intimacy, I think, to shoot this footage. And I haven't shown a lot of portions of this footage until you asked me, which is really nice. I worked with Gath Morgan at Buvik and Adrian Hurt. There was much more maybe focusing on the negative in that film, kind of. And so it was nice taking those really intimate moments, those vulnerable moments, and putting it into this piece. So thank you for that. I just want to say it's really nice to just take a moment and show work that is kind of tender. I know that's an overused word, and I don't know, the tender, a little, yeah. So yeah, that's nice. Yeah, but yeah. Yeah, I think I'll end it right there for that one.
So the piece downstairs that I created is titled, "If you're going to talk about me behind my back, at least check out my great ass."
Yes.
Parentheses, home videos. And when Cheyenne and Aaron had approached me about this, I had a couple of ideas of things that I knew you wanted to show. I also I'm a poet as well, which kind of reinforces. I don't really say that as much because I use that to sort of reinforce my screenwriting. But I co-edited an anthology of sex workers' poetry called Hustling Verse. So initially we had talked about potentially using poems, but I really wanted to create something that was self-reflective. I've never done I've never been in my own work. I've never been on the other side of the camera. And after meeting with them and talking about the show and sort of their idea about it, I really wanted to try and create almost like a found footage home movie that was kind of just a collection of images of myself, of my partners, of like cultural references that mean something to me. The title comes from a tagline from the Real Housewives of New York City. And I wanted to try and play with like tongue in cheek and like being slightly campy. But I also wanted it to have this like air of like exhibitionism and like, I don't know, softcore porn. I've carried a lot of, especially in my younger years, when I moved to Vancouver when I was 17, I had a really messy stumble with my queer identity, and a lot of that was because my understanding of my queer identity was being siphoned through other people who were looking at me and telling me how I should feel or how I should behave. So the attempt with the video downstairs was to reverse that, literally, like putting the lens on myself and sort of just create like, I don't know, a mosaic like home movie that replicates like sex tapes and like movie trailers, because a lot of my inspiration comes from filmmakers, and there's some like footage in the video downstairs, like from these filmmakers, and I recorded it all on analog video, VHS. My friend lent me his 1994 movie maker, which like shoots just VHS tapes, and I kind of just went to town and I shot like almost 3 hours of footage, and it's only 3 minutes, so there's a lot of shit that's not seen. But I had a really good time editing it, and like I wanted to put myself in there as a means to like, I don't know, uplift my own like self-image in the way that I view myself. I am quite, I mean, you wouldn't know this by watching the video downstairs, but I'm quite self-conscious. So showing my ass on camera was kind of a way to like move through that. You're all watching me process. But yeah, I really just wanted to replicate something that was like, that had elements of pop culture and self-care that meant for me, like personally, like the films, the images of my partners, all of that stuff. And yeah, it was a really great experience. I was telling them earlier, like I've never digitized footage before, and I agreed to do this, and then I was just a part of the Sundance Film Festival's Native Film Lab, so I was in Park City, Utah for the last 6 days. I was at Sundance, and I was trying to edit all of this while I was at Sundance, and it was like the biggest experience of my filmmaking career, and I was like running home at night to like edit my nudes. But yeah, I'm glad that I was like, when I pushed myself to create a new work, because being a narrative filmmaker, I'm perpetually in development, and it takes like 6 years to make a single project. So it felt good to bang something up that was new and like nobody's ever seen before, and it's like what I believe to be like an honest representation of like the person that I am, the artist that I am. So go check it out. It's also like there's some Madonna, there's the Killers, there's a lot of music. It's very like poppy. So
Thank you both for that. That's wonderful insight into both of your works, and I hope I can speak to you, but we're really grateful for your honesty in your film work, and just yourself out there for it's really wonderful.
I sent a draft to Cheyenne like last week, and I was like, "Are y'all gonna let me show this?" So
I was like,
I'm glad too. Yeah.
No problem.
We love it.
Yes. Yes. Well, my question is kind of about self-love, and the title of our show is, of course, Love Yourself. And in conversations with people who were starting out the talks about the show, we talked about concepts of self-love, self-care, and I was wondering if maybe you could both speak to the place of self-love for yourself, what you kind of think that is, and how it kind of processes through your work. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I can take a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, please go.
That's a good question. I think, so like I said, like in the previous answer, like a lot of the work that I've done as a filmmaker has been trying to humanize or shed light on my experience as a young queer Indigenous sex worker. So I think the way that I've definitely been able to like process, I guess, self-care or self-love through my work has been making experiential work about myself, and not like, I guess not holding back. Like, I feel like especially as a young person in film school, I didn't do a lot of things because I was scared of the way it would be perceived or the way I would be perceived. And I was so concerned with like my art being consumed in a way that like maybe wasn't necessarily reflective with how I felt. And sometimes being a filmmaker, you have to just let go of that because you really can't control the way somebody comes to your narrative or experiences that. But like with my first film, Positions, which is what I was workshopping a longer version of that or developing a longer version of that at Sundance. That was like an exercise in self-love and self-care. I was tired of making excuses to people about why I was doing what I was doing. Nobody seemed to know that I just had to pay my fucking rent and go to school at the same time. And so I made a film about balancing all of that. And when it first premiered, I was really scared because I thought that everyone was just going to see it on the surface level for what it was, which was just like a young 18-year-old Native boy engaging in full service sex work. But I got a much more welcoming and like meaningful exchange with audience members, especially queer Indigenous audience members who could relate to it. And those experiences, having people engage with my work, definitely is a way that I've been able to like, celebrate myself and my experiences. And like outside of my work, I mean, like the video is kind of a testament to like what I do for self-care. Like my two partners who are also both Indigenous, they like keep me together when I'm doing things and like when things are getting crazy and like, I don't know, like smoking weed, watching The Housewives, watching movies, like shit like that might seem really like banal or like have no meaning behind it. I wanted to like elevate that and show, I guess, a different sense of like what self-care looks like. So like, I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah. I'm gonna stop before I keep going. I told you both my ramble.
I would say, so I feel like
we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Like, yeah. I think there's a lot of things that Justin was saying that I really resonated with, like self-care, like surrounding yourself with people that love you, loving like that. Mutual love and care is really important. And I think for me, like self-care, ideally would have been going home sooner and like seeing things before the fire or even after the fire. And just instead of being in survival mode for so often since I was like 14 and came out as like a young butch lesbian, cut off all my hair and had like the Justin Bieber haircut, you know, downtown Fort Mary. It's just like it's been a really hard, rough life, you know. But it has, and I think just like having the viewpoints of like your partner, like filming you, like also is really important. I love pictures and our work. I think that's really important. And I think too, just like self-love means for me maybe just slowing down and just being on my ancestral territory again and just really developing myself in the lands once more, especially going to the water. I'd say like these past 10 years have been like incredibly difficult for like a myriad of reasons. And like my dearest friend and like mentor, like Nicole Kelly Westman, like on the hardest days of my life, she's also Métis from home. She would always bring me to the river. She was just like, my boy, just like let those thoughts like just go down the river. And like just that continual process. I did that all throughout the pandemic. That was my first urge to do so when I went to home. And it just like made so much sense for me. Self-care, from going back to Fort McMurray to go back to the water and just like really take the moments and like remember all those things, but just like go down the river again and like fuck up and like, come back. So yeah, that's what to me like self-care really means, just slowing down, I think. Yeah.
I feel similarly with water. I mean, in my performance practice, it's always such a long
Get me in the water.
It's canon for Cheyenne. Yeah. To be in the water.
But I guess in creating these works, I feel like there's such vulnerability in sharing these moments that you shared with us. And I think in my practice, I'm still trying to navigate when you're sharing those moments and then still like finding space to care for myself outside of my practice and within my practice. And also like the pressure of like creating work or creating your work constantly. It's like I'm just curious how if you feel like you have that like duality between like feeling the pressure to create work or I don't know, I guess I'm asking how do you take the space to care for yourself and love yourself within your practice? Is it taking time away? Is it, you know, like with performance art, you're giving so much of yourself. And I think for me, when I come out of performance, when I'm finished, even if I've left the gallery, it actually takes me sometimes like hours and hours to come out of that. And I'm learning ways to come out of it quicker through like meditation and things like that. But I'm curious within your practice, even just for myself, so I can learn if you found ways to love and care for yourself.
I think the huge thing for me that I always go back to, especially when, so a lot of my work has a layer of like being semi-autobiographical. So it is. There have been moments like so when I made my film positions, I did a festival circuit with that when I was 24. And I would just go on stage and tell everyone everything. Anyone asked a question, I was just like an open book. And I remember I was on, the year after that, I was on another festival tour with my second short film that I made. And I was also touring Hustling Verse, the poetry book that I mentioned before, of sex workers poetry. And Dawn, who is an amazing author and poet based in Vancouver. She also is an experiential full-service sex worker. She's an extremely close friend and mentor of mine. And I remember her telling me, like, you already made the work. you already put so much of yourself and of what you went through inside that film. Like, you don't necessarily owe anybody anything. You don't have to tell anybody things that you don't want to tell. And I thought, as a young person, when I was 24, I thought I had to do that because I thought it was contextualizing why I wrote certain things or why certain things happened. And I had to learn very quickly that not everyone in the audience is having that energy exchange with you. And it can, when it's all said and done, you leave and you feel like, what the fuck did I just say? Like, I just told an entire room full of strangers, like, the deepest, most intimate details about myself. So my community is a huge thing. I run almost everything by people. I have not written a script or even the video downstairs. Like, anything that I've made, it's siphoned through people that I love. Not in a way to like self-center myself or to get notes necessarily, but it helps me feel better about myself and about going out there and putting it out there. Because you're right, it can be really, really hard. And I think that also when people find out that my film work is semi-autobiographical, they feel like they know me. So they feel like they can just come and say anything to me. And that was hard to deal with as a young, in my early 20s. Like that, I had to keep myself safe from those situations. And my community is the biggest way that I do that. Like, I would not be held together if it weren't for those people that get me through making work. Yeah.
Yeah, we can take questions maybe at the end, so if that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think self-care for me has been really hard, taking those moments and like bringing it to practice. I feel like I used to be like robbed of opportunities because I like desperately needed money, like working a warehouse job. I'm really privileged to be a sky and be an RLM, and it's just really nice to have that position. But it seemed like I would often do a lot of things for self-care meant for a long time for me to do things maybe for other people or like that also related to my art practice because like I'd say everything to this point is like me to like living with my sister and having her be a part of our lives and being like a whole small family together. But this trip felt really special to me in this film because it was Tony and I on a trip right together going home. Just taking that moment with your partner. I'd say too that having boundaries, I think, has been something I've really had to learn. Kind of like just saying, like they're really important. I finally understand when I've learned in therapy for a really long time. Like try to implement them because I think for me, like this was shot at noon, so I didn't feel comfortable always like in my teen years and into like I'd say around 27, like. Especially growing up in Portland, right? I needed to be like in pure daylight. I felt like people could like just literally see me too much, like with this gendering, the harassment, everything like that. So I would really only go out like during dusk at dawn, nighttime. And I continued that way in college. I felt really like I couldn't leave my apartment whatsoever. So I think for me, shooting this at noon felt like the ultimate act of like bringing self-love back into my practice and having that moment. And also editing it was really hard because I never have known films in pure daylight before. It was, but it felt really grounding and the actual filming process was really nice. And I think I want to continue in that direction a little bit more. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It's something I'm also working on, but you know, I hope this is more of the direction I will take in the future. And also really creating artwork that I like would love to show my cousin and my auntie and my cousins alongside Carrie, my sister, and my brother Isaac. You know, I don't think they'll necessarily want to see my naked body so much, but like, you know, like sorry Carrie, you're here at Sweden, so like, I don't know what you want from me. But yeah, just stuff like that. And also showing my neighbors like, hey, like, you know, despite everything, like, you know, It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. That's kind of the thing I direction. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah.
Like your ways that be vulnerable. For me, it's really talking to you.
Yeah.
It's like a release almost sometimes. You have one more question? I do. I just want to acknowledge how much artists put themselves out there, and you both have put yourselves out there, and you and your work as well. And as somebody that's just not that's just, but is a curator and gets to work with you all, having put so much of yourself into these works. It's really interesting to hear how you create boundaries, or at least you're working on creating boundaries. I think that I can imagine how difficult that is, and because I think as viewers, we expect so much from our arts. We come to know you in these very vulnerable, intimate ways, and yet you really your own people in your own ways as well. And that must be difficult to maintain when your art is so intensely individual as well. I love getting to curate. So I'm very grateful. A very curatorial question is next, because I want to follow your work as you go, as I have been already with you, Dan, and now with Justin as well. I'm so grateful that you kind of introduced me to Justin's work. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you have planned and what you're working on. Yeah.
I recently got painting grants to do a series of paintings, and my baby book, the only one I have for my pages, right when I was literally after kids were about 3 years old, and then after it's there's nothing there unless it's but it's with my brother and sister. So Carrie and I, Isaac, my brother, we're all going to be together, and they've very patiently and very lovingly are allowing me to paint them. So I'm really excited to bring my family into it and going back to boundaries, really having a conversation. What do you want this to look like? Because it's going to be smaller and we're going to go really large. And it's just a love letter to both of them. Create a smaller book, send it off to my Earth Mom, and just really just kind of rethink how I'm moving forward. Because for me, it's family first, biological and adoptive. So yeah, that's kind of the direction I'm going in. And also their film works as well. But definitely wanted to go home back to corporate Murray, Fortune 1, just go out in the land with my family. So I get to Shirley's really taken me under her wing, my mom's older sister. So yeah, she flies up to Fortune all the time. So hopefully we get to go up there, whenever we can. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm kind of focused on. So yeah.
I have a couple things. As you say, that's not. I'm so sorry, y'all. The first thing that I think is probably coming next is I shot a web series in Toronto in the summer. Connor's actually here. He shot it with me. But it was a collaboration that I did with TJ Cathand and produced by Yaz Morgan. And it's a 5-episode miniseries or 5-episode web series about a group of queer Indigenous friends. Just I don't want to really give away too much of the narrative. It's basically they live in the city and they're getting up to things and things are going down. It's the first time that I've ever co-wrote and co-directed something. And we also were lucky enough to have one of our episodes written by Ariel Twist. It's probably the best episode of the entire show. I was just watching cuts of it the other day. I'm really excited for our community to see that. Because when we got together, TJ and I, we really just wanted to create something that was a contemporary representation of queer Indigenous life in the city that wasn't necessarily stooped in trauma or problems. There is drama in the show. Like there's a storyline that is like it's drama, but at the end of the day, it's really just like a glimpse into these characters' lives and their kinship. It's titled Kin. So that's gonna probably come out the later half of this year. It's in post right now. And then I have 2 other projects that I am developing with the Sundance Lab. When you get into the Sundance Institute, they you do your year program, but then you're kind of always in the Sundance Institute. Like they're continuing to meet with me and try to develop my career. So I'm trying to get funding to shoot a feature film at the end of this year in Vancouver, and it's about 2 Indigenous women who are being called home for very different reasons, and they essentially go on this odyssey throughout Vancouver in an attempt to gather and reclaim the messier one, her belongings. And that narrative is kind of about, I wanted to write a movie about sex workers that had nothing to do with sex work at all. So you follow these women throughout a 17-hour period. That's where the title comes from. And they're kind of just dealing with life and juggling what it means to be Native and queer and a whore and have a family life as well. So I hope to get that off the ground. Cross your fingers. And then I also am developing a mini series based on the short film Positions that I made. And that was the initial project that I got into the Sundance Lab with. So that's taking my 12-minute short film and expanding it into an 8-episode mini series, or limited series, sorry. And it kind of just follows this kid's journey and sort of coming of age or coming into your queerness through the lens of dating and sex work and jobs. And a lot of it's about a lot of people look at my work and think that it's just about the sex or the sex work. And with the limited series of positions, I really want to talk about labor and employment as a queer Indigenous person. I had the reason I started doing sex work is because nobody hired me when I moved to Vancouver. I grew up in St. Ambrose. It's a town of about 50 people. So I had no resume and I couldn't get a job. When I finally got a job, it's because my brother's boyfriend hired me at H&M. So, and I still wasn't able to pay my rent with that. So I want to talk a lot about labor and opportunity and working. So trying, again, perpetually in development. So maybe you'll see this in 6 years and you'll remember this conversation. But you'll know that I spent all of those 6 years trying to get it made.
Will there be auditions for this Indigenous women?
I casted them already.
You did?
I did. But there are other roles, Shannon. There are other roles.
Missy Ho. Oh my gosh.
There are other roles. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's exciting.
Yeah. I actually met a really the project that I was talking about, Kin, that I shot with Connor. We met this amazing actress. I'm probably going to butcher her name. Eliana. She's also a model. If you follow her on Instagram, she's this beautiful Indigenous trans femme, and she was came onto set and was yeah, I've never acted before. I'm really nervous, and then blew all of us out of the park. And I was okay, bitch, you've never acted before. I don't believe you. So I want to work with her again. So hopefully she'll be in that film.
Yeah. I think now we'll open it up for anyone in the. Are you okay taking questions?
Yeah, please.
If anyone has any questions.
One just compliment people that in doing stuff. I used to work with the Main Street people just off the street myself as a news worker. I used to be on a computer center and give her a lot of things to work. And this is many years ago. We had such difficulties. You know, when you bring in, I don't know the labels. My daughter and mine just get mad at me because I don't remember the labels. But like there was one, he looked like a man, but he was a real woman. I'm sorry if I'm not being correct, but I'm just a 73 and I don't know the Ducharme is, and I've been on here for a while. But we have to put more female units and say, just because there was no place for me, I used to go visit them. It's horrible for that poor person, you know. But I'm glad that this is happening, and I'm going to be going back into the communities working. I just want to know the few people that are working, you know, we go back home, and it depends where you're from or the community, how they've been indoctrinated. What do your elders say? Like I know back in some of the places that I've been in, communities, they deny it, absolutely deny it. How do you work with that? Do they, and when you go to ask your people, you'll get, you know, feedback, and if they don't agree with what you're doing, how do you work around that? Because I know I do some outrageous things sometimes just to teach.
Right.
And that really doesn't go over very well.
Yeah, that's a good question. So sorry if you, I'm just gonna jump in. I remember showing my mère and my mom my film positions, and I had been honest with them about my lived experience as a sex worker, because I knew that I was going to make work about it, and I didn't want to lie to them, and I wanted them to be able to see my work and engage with it. So it was important for me to be honest, and I will say, and the honesty from my community came first and foremost because I have a really strong network of sex workers in Vancouver who all come to their experience with sex work under very different circumstances, under very different lived experiences. But I wanted to be accountable to them first and foremost. So it was important for me, if I was going to be going around and showing this film and talking about it, that people knew that I wasn't just talking about this or pulling it out of nowhere. I wanted people to know that it was experiential. And that's a good question. I mean, I remember my mom, when I told her, she struggled a bit. I mean, I have a wonderful relationship with my mom, but it hasn't always been the greatest. And now she holds so much space for me. And I think at first it was just hard to imagine or like fathom that I was doing these things. I mean, my mom is like my brother and I's biggest fan. She would watch me do anything. So she came around. But my mama has always been, which is my grandma, she's always been so fucking supportive. When I came out to her as a sex worker, she made a joke and she didn't care. I remember she said to me, she was like, as long as you're keeping yourself safe and you have somebody that you like, that you're talking to that is also like aiding and keeping you safe. Like I made it aware that I had a community. But that always hasn't been the scenario. Like I've shown my film in some places where, you know, I've been accused of glorifying the experience for young Indigenous people, especially young queer Indigenous people. And that wasn't my attempt. I didn't want it to read like a how-to to go out and turn tricks. That was never my intention. So it's hard hearing from elders in community who think that that's what I was doing, that I was romanticizing my experience. But then I also have so many queer Indigenous people that come up to me when that show, after that film plays, and they tell me how much it meant to them to see that, and how they don't feel as alone in their experience doing sex work. So that makes it easier. I'm not going to please everybody, and I understand that colonialism has done a fucking hell of a job on our people, and I understand that the words and the language that those elders are using, it's coming from a very specific place, and it's a learned hatred for your body and for exchange and labor. I mean, I don't think me going and doing full service sex work for an entire afternoon is any different than like my uncles selling their body to go to work on the rigs. Like we're still engaging with we're still engaging with labor, we're still engaging with our body, we're still doing things. And we're doing it to live. So like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. But again, you can't please everyone. But I've been in conversations where folks have said some like downright vile, frightening things to me. And I kind of just have to take it on the chin. I mean, I don't make work to try and change people's minds. And that's the thing that, like, sorry, I'm rambling again, but when Positions came out and it started getting reviewed, people said, like, oh, this film is not telling you how to feel. Like, you can leave this film and you can absolutely hate the character. You can disagree with his life or the way he's choosing to make money, but there's still so much heart in there. And that was, like, what was important to me. I didn't want to try and change someone's mind. I didn't want them to sit down and then all of a sudden like, oh, I'm okay with sex work. Like that was never my intention. I just wanted to show what it was like for me. And I think like having those conversations and then seeing work like that, it just makes people hopefully open their minds and expand the way they think. And to try and understand why so many queer Indigenous people engage in sex work, survival sex work specifically. I think that's like something that people miss when they're watching my film, that like he's just trying to survive, right? So that's a good question, but yeah.
I think for me, like going home, dealing with that would be really hard. Like I've recently met up with my nephew in the last 5 years. When she met with me, I was really nervous because she knew me as her niece that got taken away. And it was really important. She showed up in this beautiful jacket and had a really feather beaded onto it that was full of rainbows. And it was just like really gorgeous. You know, she was like, "Don't worry, like it's okay. The creator doesn't make it into France." And I like cried. We're like at the girls downtown for like we're the fanciest place. Just got a job with chief and council, so she felt all fancy. And we just like, I just cried. It felt so good. And I'd say the woman in my family or the matriarch, it's a matriarch, but like it just nothing happens unless the women are the ones like leading that. So she keeps me safe, and my cousin Jeanette. She's also very like butch, and so Jeanette's like, I met her and she's like, we're gonna go hunting with the men, but don't worry, like you're safe with me. And she's like, you know, a lot older than me, so she kind of took me under her wing. So I think for me, it's I feel safe, protected by like my most senior family. Like they won't. I feel really like they won't let too much too many people fuck with me, but I've heard everything under the sun at this point, like literally everything. So I'm just kind of like, but in the past some elders have been like difficult to work with. You know, that happens, but it is unfortunate, but we pray for them on their healing journeys too.
I think you bring up a really good point too, because like I've been a filmmaker now for 10 years, and I've made 4 short films and now this web series, and none of the men in my family, my dad, my uncles, my grandpa, none of them have seen my work, and they never want to. They actually don't even acknowledge that I'm an artist. It's a lot easier for them to talk about my brother's work, being a fashion designer, because it's more accessible. But yeah, I like my films have shown in Winnipeg, which I found the whole house from Manitoba, and like you said, every time my films screen, it's my aunties and my cousins and my mom who show out and support me. And you know, I think, like I said, colonialism and homophobia is one hell of a drug. So I understand, but I also like, I don't know, I wish that they would expand their minds and like one day they're going to come to me and they're going to need money, and I'm going to sit them down and make them watch the movie. No, I'm joking. But you're right. Like, I don't know. It's the women and femmes in my life and in my family hold it the fuck down. And I would not be able to do what I do or make the work that I do if it wasn't for their support. So yeah, I definitely resonate with what you're saying.
Thank you so much. I love you both, and thank you for sharing all of that and for sharing these incredible works with us. I really am honored and so grateful to know both of you. And thank you everyone for coming. Be sure to check out all of the works before you leave. Yeah, thank you, Ducharme. I love this space so much too. And it was so lovely to get to do this with you as well. And yeah, do you have any final words?
I think you said it really
Okay.
Thank you.
and thank you to all of you who came out today. We feel your support, and it's really rad. Thank you.
Go check out my ass.